Quote, love, unquote. Chapter 21. By New Amsterdam. 5 years ago. A-side. Kirishima fiddles with the microphone, adjusting the screen of his laptop. Once he's satisfied, he pulls his cherry wood acoustic guitar into his lap, strumming out a few chords. He brushes his dark hair back from his face, takes a deep breath, and prepares to sing. Kirishima! The door busts open, and Ashida rushes inside, hands held high in the air. When she spots him sitting at his desk, she pauses, then brings her hands together in a prayer for forgiveness. Were you recording? Sorry. Kirishima lets out a deep breath, pulls off his guitar, and shuts his laptop with a decisive snap. It's fine, he says, smiling. I was just messing around. Ashida walks towards him, hands on her hips. She's dressed from her morning on some talk show, a frilly white dress and delicate dewy makeup. Don't say that! I hear you practicing up here all the time. It's gotta be something. He swivels around in his chair, neck tilted back as he stares up at the ceiling. He's barely ready to voice his ambitions in his own head, let alone aloud to another person, even if that person is Ashida. Just getting some ideas down, he murmurs finally, bashfully. She clicks her tongue against her teeth, marches towards him, and places her hands on his shoulders. Are you sure it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that Crimson Chevalier is going to be at the show tonight? Kirishima blushes the same color as his favorite band's namesake. Sero had mentioned it in passing. Alien Queen was invited to perform at a televised charity show for New Year's, and Crimson Chevalier was also on the star-studded lineup. Sure, the rock star has been Kirishima's idol since he was old enough to know what music was, but that doesn't mean he's going to do anything about it. He can't just go up to one of the greatest musicians of all time and say, "Hey, I play the guitar in a backup band. I write songs sometimes. You want to hear one?" Kirishima! Ashida reprimands. Don't make that face! He hadn't realized that he'd stopped smiling. Quickly, Kirishima tries to get it back, but ends up just turning away from Ashida, his dark hair shielding him from her scrutinizing expression. Ashida sighs, sits down on the floor so that she can lay her arms across Kirishima's knees and look directly up at him. You know I think you're amazing, right? The laughter is an involuntary reaction. But what else is Kirishima supposed to do when Ashida says such unbelievable things? I do, Ashida says, pouting at him. I don't lie, you know that. Sometimes I'm scared that you're more talented than I am, and as soon as you realize it, I'm going to lose my best friend and favorite guitarist. Kirishima reaches out to take her hands. Don't be stupid. Take your own advice then, she says, sticking her tongue out at him. I know you're incredible, and you need to know it too. So, whatever you were psyching yourself up about, just do it. He bites down on the inside of his cheek. What if it's like last time again? Ashida frowns, her dark eyes wide with sympathy. She shrugs. I mean, I guess it might be. In an instant, Kirishima is back to that moment in time, taking the stage in front of a panel of judges, just him and his guitar and a microphone. He adjusts the mic, accidentally knocks it with his elbow, and a hideous screech echoes through the hall. Sorry. The judges murmur. The host tells him to take his time. Kirishima forces a smile, adjusts his guitar, strums a few notes, makes sure he's in tune. Whenever you're ready, Kirishima-kun. He takes a deep breath, shuts his eyes. The song is already playing through his head, the notes and words that he finessed into something that properly convey his feelings. He keeps his eyes closed, begins to strum out the opening melody. He opens his mouth to sing. The words, the one he's sung 1,000,000 times, are ready on the tip of his tongue. He just needs to let them out, Show the world exactly who he is and what he's capable of. He's ready. He strums out a few notes, gets to the cue for the lyrics to begin, and then nothing. His mouth hangs open, and the words won't come. His fingers falter along his guitar strings. He opens his eyes and sees the judges staring back at him, waiting. He freezes. His melody stops echoing around the hall. The entire place is silent, except for the judges shuffling papers and muttering to each other. The host, to one side of the stage, forces a smile. Want to start again? But Kirishima can't move. Can't speak. Everyone is staring at him, and he can't do anything in response. He's frozen, and he's going to be stuck in this moment forever, surrounded by glaringly bright lights, and disapproving judges, and a pitying host, and the suffocating sensation of his own failure. Hey! Ashido claps her hands against Kirishima's cheeks, squishing his face. Stop that! Kirishima shakes his head, biting down on his lower lip. The audition had been such a long time ago, but it still haunts him. He's gotten better at performing on stage, playing as part of Ashido's band. But the spotlight is never on him, and no one knows his name. He's safe in the shadows, and all eyes are on Ashido. Look, Ashido says, taking Kirishima's hands in her own. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. But I remember that little boy in middle school who played Crimson Chevalier songs perfectly and told all our friends that he was going to be a rock star. Don't you think you owe it to him to try again? She's right, because she's Ashido, and she's always right. That's why people are so drawn to her. She says exactly what she feels, lets her emotions out into the world without restraint or care. She's so brave. Kirishima wishes he had even a drop of her courage. Ashido smiles at him, squeezes his hands. You were going to record something, right? Is it okay if I stay in here while you do? Kirishima shrugs. I don't need to do it right now. You don't, she agrees glibly. But you could, and now's as good a time as any. She walks over to his bed and flops down on it, kicking her legs in the air. He's still staring down at his lap when she says, a moment later, don't you think you'll regret it later, if you don't even try? Somehow, that gives him the courage he needs. He opens the laptop back up, fidgets with the mic again. He starts with a familiar Crimson Chevalier song, one that he's always associated with letting yourself be vulnerable, even if that brings pain along with it. Crimson Chevalier has a deep timbre and a voice full of gravitas, and Kirishima's singing is nothing like his. His lighter voice lifts the tone of the song, makes it more hopeful than mournful. When he's done, Ashido claps her hands and laughs in delight. Man, I love your version of that song, she says. Now go on, more. It's nice to have an appreciative audience, even if it's only one person. Or maybe because he knows this person, loves her with all his heart. She's the best audience he could have. He doesn't know what he did to deserve Ashido. The next song is one of his own. The music itself isn't complicated. He's still working on composition, and there's always something missing when he tries for a more complex melody. But the words are what he's put his whole heart into. He closes his eyes and sings, lets the emotions build as he's whisked away to another world, the kind of place where nothing can hurt him, where he can't fail or disappoint. When he opens his eyes, Ashido is staring at him, slack-jawed. What? He mutters, shutting off the recording. Nothing, Ashido says, shaking her head. I wish you could see yourself the way I see you. They get to the studio with the rest of the band, and Ashido is immediately whisked away for hair and makeup. Kirishima's in his usual performance outfit, a black button-down, black jeans, and beat-up red sneakers. In his messenger bag are 2 newly burned CDs, and Kirishima keeps patting them anxiously, like he's afraid they'll burn a hole through the canvas. After soundcheck, the band is left at a loose end, and Kirishima takes up residence on the couch in their dressing room, notepad balancing against his knees as he scribbles out ideas for new lyrics. Oh, there you are! He looks up to see Sero standing over him, dressed in black slacks and a polo shirt. There's a laminated badge pinned to his pocket. Sero Hunter, intern, Cellophane Agencies. Shouldn't you be with Ashido? Kirishima asks. What if she needs a coffee or something? He grins, teasing, but Sero blushes a furious red. I'm not that much of a gopher, he protests. Kirishima lifts his brow. From his vantage point, not much has changed since Sero and Ashido started dating. Sero still hangs on Ashido's every word, and Ashido still seems delighted and flattered by all the attention. But whatever works for them, works for them. Anyway, Sero says, nudging Kirishima over on the couch so he can sit down beside him. I thought you'd be interested in this. He passes over his cell phone, browser pulled up to a tabloid article. The photograph that dominates the screen shows 2 familiar actors, Midoriya Izuku and Bakugou Katsuki. Midoriya has his hands up in a placating gesture, smiling nervously. Bakugou is gesturing rudely, handsome features contorted into a grimace. Kirishima thumbs through the article, worrying his lower lip between his teeth. Trouble on UA's set? Word has it that sparks are flying on the set of TV's hottest teen drama, and not the sexy sort. Last week, it was announced that star Midoriya Izuku, who plays Daiki on the hit show, would also be featured in an upcoming animated film this summer. The film, The Day, marks a return to the spotlight for Yagi Toshinori, who retired from the big screen a decade ago. Now teaming with Midoriya for an animated tale about legacy, mentorship, and following your dreams, the film has already been tapped as a major triumph. But all might not be well in Midoriya Izuku's world. Word has it that tensions between him and co-star Bakugou Katsuki have been running high, culminating in a physical altercation last week. Bakugou's character Nobuhiko has always been a force working against Midoriya's Daiki, but are 2 of our favorite actors forgetting where the show ends and real life begins? Kirishima scrolls back up to stare at the picture of Bakugou again. He has his eyes cast down, not giving the photographer the benefit of even a glance. There's a storm brewing in his fierce red eyes, and Kirishima wishes he could reach into the picture and offer Bakugou some form of comfort. So, Sero says, leaning back and folding his arms behind his neck. Sounds like he's going to be a real fun to work with. What do you mean? Kirishima looks up, still frowning. Sero huffs out a laugh. Oh, right. You got distracted when you heard about Crimson Chevalier. But they've got to keep this show going until midnight. Plus, it's for charity, which means everyone wanted in on the action, including UA's cast. Kirishima stares down at the picture of Bakugou Katsuki, then back at Sero. You don't mean... Sero shoots finger guns in Kirishima's direction. You got it. It won't be at the same time, of course, but tonight you'll be on the same stage as Midoriya Izuku, Todoroki Shoto, Uraraka Ochiko, and Bakugou Katsuki. How does it feel? I'm gonna throw up, Kirishima says, jumping to his feet. Hey, come on, Sero says, grabbing Kirishima's hand and pulling him back down. It's not a big deal. I mean, it's easy for me to say that since I'm just the backstage guy, but really, I'm sure Ashido's going to be introduced to them backstage, and if you want, maybe you could meet them too. Kirishima has been daydreaming about meeting Bakugou Katsuki since UA premiered 4 years ago. There's just something magnetic about him, the life and emotion that he brings to his character. Kirishima's never fallen so hard. I really don't think I can do that, Kirishima admits, running a hand through his hair. Sero frowns at him. So what? You're just gonna stand 2 steps behind Ashido and play guitar for her the rest of your life? When he says it like that, it makes Kirishima sound pathetic. The truth is, being a part of Ashido's band has been a lot of fun. He's a much better musician than he'd been at the start, and he's gotten to play in front of incredible crowds. He just isn't playing his own music, or doing anything that anyone would notice. No, Kirishima says stubbornly. So you're gonna introduce yourself to Bakugou and Crimson Chevalier then? Sero's grin is so wide he looks like a jack-o'-lantern. Maybe I will, Kirishima says, jabbing a fist in the air. The way his stomach lurches says otherwise, but he also wants to make Ashido and Sero proud. That's the spirit. Sero laughs. The comedy show is being hosted by Takeyama Yu and Nishiya Shinji, who recently co-starred in an action romance. They make an odd pair, but it works somehow. Takeyama is talkative and expressive, with her long blonde curls and wide enthusiasm. Nishiya is more soft-spoken, often only uttering a word or two in response to Takeya's long commentaries. They balance each other out. Backstage is a zoo. Actors, musicians, and other celebrities are running around, in various states of dress and preparation. Kirishima spots Olympic swimmer Asabi Suyu, and Monoma Nato, a young comedian famous for his impressions. Other faces go by in a blur, too many to recognize or take note of. It's easy enough for Kirishima to slink back into the shadows. Ashido is having the time of her life, going from one person to the next, introducing herself and laughing and telling jokes. She looks happier than she has in a while, actually. Kirishima can't tell if it's her rigorous schedule that's weighing on her, or the fact that the label so closely controls her image and music. But she's not as enthusiastic about being Alien Queen as she was even a year ago. It's nice to see her smiling so freely tonight, which she usually only does around Sero these days. The set is towards the middle of the show, after a few other acts, but before the grand finale that will be Crimson Chevalier. They get off stage, and Ashido grabs Kirishima by the arm, yanking him to one side. So? She demands. Where are the CDs? Let's go find them. Kirishima is sure that Crimson Chevalier has had to fight off more than a few overambitious fans in his time. He doesn't want to come off like that, but if Crimson hears his music and likes it, then Kirishima will know beyond a doubt that he has the talent to make it. He finds his bag in his dressing room, holds up the CDs for Ashido's inspection. She beams at him, clapping her hands together. He's gonna love you, she insists. Her voice drops a bit when she says, I think everyone is. He can't quite figure out why she sounds so sad when she says that. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that everyone loves her as Alien Queen, but she doesn't seem happy about it. Ashido, Kirishima says, but he doesn't know how to continue. Be a man, he thinks to himself. Find your courage. What is it? Ashido cocks her head to one side. Are you happy? He asks. Ashido laughs. What are you talking about? Of course I am, and I'll be even happier when we get done talking to Crimson Chevalier. Come on, we still got a bit of time before he's due on stage. It's impossible to break through Ashido's wall of cheer once she's decided not to talk about something. But Kirishima still has his misgivings about this. Why don't you go catch up with Sero? He suggests. I think I need to do this on my own. She frowns at him, hands balanced on her hips. You sure? Yeah. Kirishima grins as widely, as sincerely as he can. This is something he needs to do. Needs to prove to himself that he can do it. He grabs the CDs and heads out of the dressing room. The chaos backstage hasn't died down any. It's like playing celebrity bingo. Everywhere he looks, there's someone else to admire for their art, or they're acting, or because they're just plain beautiful. How do famous people handle this all the time? How do they not feel inadequate and ugly when sizing themselves up against this competition? But he can't afford to think like that right now. He believes in his music and his desire to share it with the world. If he doesn't try, how will he ever achieve his own dreams? Crimson Chevalier has his own dressing room, of course, complete with a bright red star mounted on the door with his name printed across it. Crimson's been a staple of the music world for decades. He practically invented all of the genres of music that Kirishima loves, not to mention revolutionized style, and became an icon in and of itself. The thought of meeting him in person is almost too much for Kirishima to handle. He clutches the CDs in his hands, sucks in a deep breath, before letting it out slowly. Ashido and Sero wouldn't lie to him. They wouldn't set him up for embarrassment or failure. He has to believe in himself, as much as they believe in him. He lifts his hand and knocks on the door. Maybe these were the wrong songs to record. Maybe Crimson will think Kirishima is arrogant for covering one of his own songs. Maybe Kirishima's own writing isn't up to par. Maybe he's not showcasing his vocal range enough. Or maybe he pushed it too hard, highlighting his weaknesses. His recording equipment is crappy, and probably didn't catch him to the best effect. Maybe he's kidding himself, thinking that anything could make him sound professional, talented, good. The doorknob turns, and the door begins to open. Can't do this. Why did he think he could do this? Why did he let Ashido talk him into this? Why did he let Sero psych him up? Why do they both keep pushing this when Ashido already has a career and Sero needs to focus on working his way up from intern to agent? Are they just playing some kind of grand, long-running joke on him? No, of course not. They never do that. They're his friends. They're good, kind people. But maybe they're too kind. Maybe their kindness, their friendship, blinds them to how he actually sounds. Shit. Should have just gotten an objective opinion before recording, before bringing these songs here. How could he have been so stupid? The door opens, and Kirishima jumps back as though he's been shocked. Standing in front of him is a tall, imposing man, whose face is worn with age. His hair is a furious red, sticking out from his head and reaching a prominent peak. He wears a black leather jacket, a heavy silver chain around his neck, and rings across his fingers. Crimson Chevalier. Can I help you? His voice is low and gravelly, an echo of the phenomenal sound that Kirishima has been hearing on records for years. Kirishima looks up into Crimson Chevalier's dark eyes, surrounded by crow feet. He's wearing a quizzical expression, waiting for Kirishima's response. He opens his mouth to speak, to introduce himself, to express what Crimson Chevalier's music has meant for him his entire life. No sound comes from him. His voice is caught before it even reaches his throat, pulled down into the pit of his stomach. Once again, he's frozen. You all right there? Crimson asks. His shiny black boots tap against the ground as he takes a step towards Kirishima. It's too much. He can't speak, but he can move. Hands still clutching his CDs, Kirishima turns on his heel and bolts down the hallway. He runs until his lungs ache, until his chest burns. Stagehands call out to him, tell him to watch where he's going, but he can't see more than a few feet in front of him, because his vision is blurry with tears. Stupid, stupid, stupid! He keeps running, not trying to get any place in particular. He just wants to get away from the shame of himself. But he can't, because there's nowhere to go to escape his own failings. He slams into something, entire body reverberating with the force. He falls back, weight landing uncomfortably on his palms. He hisses in pain, looking up to see who he just crashed into. The person in front of him is about his own age. He's fallen backwards too, but immediately scrambles up to his knees. He's glaring at Kirishima, his red eyes narrowed and holding deadly fire. Pale blonde hair frames his face, sticking up in a way that's artfully intentional. He's wearing black jeans and a UA baseball jacket, red and green. Bakugou Katsuki. "Watch where the fuck you're going," he grinds out. And his voice is so much more than it's ever been through the TV screen. There's sparks in his voice, acid and fire. He isn't softened at all by Nobuhiko's experiences with Ayane. He's raw and angry and really, really hot. I... Say something, Kirishima tells himself desperately. Apologize at least. But he's still on the floor, face streaked with tears. CDs probably crushed when we landed on his hands. He's a mess of a person who lives off words, but can't form them at the most important moments. "Well?" Bakugou demands, getting to his feet. He reaches out, grabs Kirishima by the shoulder and hoists him up. "You bumped into me, didn't you? Not going to try and claim it was my fault?" Usually, when people talk about someone stealing their breath away, it's in a romantic sense. Kirishima is breathless, but it's not because he's falling for Bakugou. No, it's because being near him is like walking up to a burning flame. It seals the very oxygen from the air, hoarding it for himself. Bakugou's presence is so overwhelming that it leaves room for nothing. No one else. Bakugou clicks his tongue against his teeth, pushing Kirishima away with an impatient, disgusted noise. "Whatever." He stuffs his hands into the pockets of his baseball jacket and turns away. As soon as Bakugou's gaze leaves him, Kirishima turns on his heel and walks away with as much dignity as he can muster. He ducks behind a corner as soon as he finds one, face burning red. He slinks down onto the floor, hugging his knees to his chest, and tries to remember how to breathe. It takes him a few moments, but eventually he collects himself and gets back up on his feet. He had just been less than a foot away from Bakugou Katsuki. He had touched Bakugou Katsuki. And once again, he had completely fucking blown it. What is wrong with him? He looks down at the CDs that he's been clutching like a lifeline. The jewel case on one of them is cracked, a single straight line running across it. Kirishima throws the cases down on the floor, wants to stomp the CDs out of existence. What use are his ideas, his songs, his voice, if you can't muster up the guts to share them with anyone? At the last moment, he grabs the CDs up from the ground. Shaking his head in disappointment, he drops them into a nearby trash can. It's probably where they belong. He heads back to the dressing room, throws himself down on the couch, and drapes an arm over his eyes. Maybe if he blocks out the rest of the world will block him out too. Right now, the last thing he wants is to be seen. "There you are! How did it go?" Of course, it's Ashido standing over him, smiling brightly. There's glitter dusted across her cheekbones, pale pink accenting her eyelids and lips. She's a fairy princess more than an alien queen. Not great, Kirishima grinds out. Not sure what else to say. Ashido blinks in surprise. "What? Why? Everyone's been saying Crimson's really friendly, and when I met him, I told you you wanted to meet him. He says he was looking forward to it." Of course, Ashido had met Crimson already. She probably had no problem talking to him, walked up and introduced herself without a care in the world. It probably hadn't even mattered to her. The anxiety curling in Kirishima's stomach twists and transforms, from a constricting boa to a poisonous viper. "Why did you tell me to do that?" he says, voice hollow and dark. "What?" Ashido asks. "Why did you tell me to go see Crimson?" Kirishima spits out, self-loathing and disappointment twisting into something vicious and angry. You knew! You knew that I couldn't do this! What are you talking about? Ashido asks, brows drawing together in concern. What, did you not find him? I told you, I can go with you. I'm sure he hasn't gone on stage yet. Stop it! Kirishima says, slapping Ashido's hand away when she tries to reach from him. Just stop it. Not everyone is like you. We can't all just go up to anyone and assume that they're going to think we're the best thing ever. Ashido startles, leans away from him. I don't think that. Kirishima doesn't hear her enough to process her words, her concern, her hurt. He jumps to his feet, throws his hands in the air. I don't want to keep trying, okay? There's only so many times I can go through this, that I can be reminded of how much I can't do this. I'm done. Eijirou, Ashido says, eyes wet with tears, with pity for him. Stop, he says, slumping in defeat. Just don't do anything else for me. He stalks away from her, out of the door of the dressing room. He nearly crashes into Sero, who's balancing a tray of drinks in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Of course he is. Ashido was probably getting thirsty. Whoa, hey! What's the matter? Sero asks. Ask her, Kirishima says, gesturing back towards the dressing room. He walks further down the hall. Wait, what? Kirishima! Sero moves to follow, but the hallway is crowded and he's balancing too many things. Hold on a sec. What did Ashido do? He slumps down in a corner backstage, where the other performers and extras are watching the show live on a large screen. Takayama Yu is there in a sparkly purple dress, tossing her curls over one shoulder as she introduces Crimson Chevalier. Before you perform for us, are there any words of wisdom you'd like us all to take with us into the new year? How do we be as cool and manly as you are, Crimson? He's ready to perform, shiny red guitar in his hands, as he leans forward to the microphone. He shrugs, then squares his shoulders and says, The only way to truly be manly is to live a life without regret. If you're living the truth of yourself, then there's no need to look back. Kirishima sinks in on himself as he hears the words. It feels like all he has are regrets. Right now, he feels the worst about lashing out to Ashido, but he also hates himself for always running away. He wishes he could be someone else entirely, someone who wasn't so burdened by all his failures. Crimson Chevalier begins to play, and for those moments, Kirishima closes his eyes and listens to the music, and forgets himself entirely. A few days into the new year, Kirishima bundles up his notebook and laptop into his messenger bag and heads to his favorite cafe. A bell chimes overhead as he enters, and the barista behind the counter waves at him. Hey, Kirishima! Kaminari Denki calls out, adjusting his black and white apron. Long time no see, man. What's up? Kirishima purses his lips for a moment, and takes a deep breath. Hey, Kaminari. You know a good place to get my hair dyed? B-side. Today, his agent has come to him with an incredible offer. Bako has never done voice acting, but his agent assures that it will be easy enough for him to do. After all, he's Bakugou Katsuki. Is anything beyond him? Of course, Bakugou can't argue with that. What's this job then? He grumbles, sitting back on the couch in his trailer of UA set, feet up on the table. His agent goes on to explain the specifics. An animated film by an acclaimed director, a story that was deep with mythology, but set in the modern day, about a young boy who meets his idol and grows up into a hero. I'm gonna play the main character, is that it? Bakugou rolls his eyes, No, his agent amends. Actually, they've already cast the boy and the mentor. It's why they want you on board as the rival-turned-villain. You've worked with both of them before. Bakugou sits forward all at once, his feet hitting the floor with an audible thump. What? It's Yagi Toshinori-san, his agent says, voice rising in excitement. He hasn't done a movie since, well, the idiot finally has the decency to realize who the fuck he's talking to and what the hell he's about to say. Since the 7th All Might movie, Bakugou spits out. Yeah, I fucking know. I was there. His agent nods, laughing nervously. Anyway, even if he's not acting in front of the camera, it's still a huge deal. The press for this film is going to be incredible, and they want you to be part of it. Bakugou's been a part of enough Yagi-san's news-making moments to last a lifetime. The memory of the last time still sits low in his stomach, bitter and undigested. He doesn't think he'll ever get over it. And he draws out the word. Who's playing the main character then? Midori-kun, his agent says brightly. I'm guessing they want to capitalize on UA's success, and you two certainly work well together. You're fucking fired, Bakugou mutters. Excuse me? His agent says, leaning back. Bakugou gets to his feet, jabs a finger in the man's direction. You fucking heard me, asshole. I'm not doing some shitty movie with Deku and All Might. And you've pulled this shit on me for the last time. You're fired. Shouldn't we discuss this with your parents first? I'm 18, fuckhead. You work for me. Or you did. Now you can go and try and find someone else's life to fuck around with. I don't actually care. Bakugou-kun, his former agent calls out. But Bakugou isn't listening. He stalks out of the trailer, slamming the door behind him. In retrospect, going to find Deku immediately after that hadn't been his brightest idea. But how the fuck was he supposed to have known the press would be swarming set that day? That they'd seen him tell Deku exactly what he thought? You didn't just tell him, he reminds himself. You slammed him into a fucking wall. You're letting your anger get the best of you, his father had said on the phone, after the story had broken in the press. And you fired your agent? What's going on, Katsuki? Are you alright? He's throwing a tantrum is what he's doing, his mother cuts in, voice sharp. You better get a hold of yourself, you hear me, Katsuki? Stop picking on Izuku before he wises up and gets a restraining order. Shut up, I know, Bakugou hisses. He'd only picked up because it had been his father's number calling, but he should have realized that they'd both wanted to talk to him. Or attached the fucking hip anyway. Katsuki, his father says with a sigh. Don't talk to your mother that way. Let him talk, Masaru, his mother says. And Bakugou can hear the sneer in her voice. Hates it, because when she talks like that, she sounds just like him. What is it, brat? What are you trying to prove here? That you can throw your career away as easily as you built it? Bakugou feels like he's swallowing boiling water. It goes down his throat, scalding, and sits bubbling in his stomach. No! Shut up! Then what? His mother asks. He hears her voice soften, and he hates it. You've had a lot of opportunities, kiddo. A lot of luck. I'm not saying you didn't put in the work, but you can't assume it's always going to be so easy. If you don't soften up, or at least pretend to, eventually your talent isn't going to be enough reason to put up with you. We love you, Katsuki, his father says. Like Bakugou doesn't already know that. We just want what's best for you. So please don't throw anyone else into a wall, alright? Fine, Bakugou spits out, if only to get them to drop it. But I'm not doing a fucking movie with him. He can go die for all I care. Him and All Might. You don't mean that, his father says. Bakugou lets out a sound like a boiling kettle. Of course he means it. He was the one who destroyed All Might, Yagi-san's career. If you could stop being reminded of that, maybe you could finally move on. We're gonna come up to the city and see you this weekend, his mother says matter-of-factly. After we do something about finding you a new agent. I'll do it myself, Bakugou snaps at her. He doesn't need them, just like he doesn't need his fuckhead agent. He's gonna get where he wants to be on his own, without anyone's help or pity, without idiots like Deku hanging off his coattails. He will. The ride to the studio is awkward, to say the least. Ingenium Talent sends over a limo, and so Ida, Uraraka, Todoroki, and Deku sit on side, with Bakugou across from them. He has his arms crossed over his chest, feet splayed out into the space between the seats. He glares at all four of them, daring them to make eye contact with him. He lands on Deku, because of course he does. The nerd is dressed up in a white button-down and a red tie that he can't even tie correctly, his hands folded in his lap. Everything about him speaks of innocence, but Bakugou knows better than that. He always has, even though no one has ever believed him. Let's try and be civil, okay? Uraraka's saying. He turns to glare at her. Why should I? If I push Deku off the fucking stage, these idiots will eat it up. Ida jabs a hand at him, and Bakugou has half a mind to bite off one of his fingers. That will not do, Bakugou-kun. You represent not only yourself, but UA and the studio as well. You are not playing Nobuhiko-kun at this moment, and you and Midoriya are colleagues. I don't care, Bakugou bites out. Don't push him, Todoroki says tiredly. He's staring out the window, like the rest of them are minor annoyances that he doesn't want to put up with. Bakugou hates how aloof he is, how nothing ever seems to really touch him. It's fine, Deku says, lifting both of his hands. The press just got us at a bad moment before. You all don't need to worry. Bakugou bares his teeth at Deku. He doesn't need that idiot covering for him. The press had arrived after the worst of it. After Bakugou had told Deku that he only barely tolerated him on the set of UA, that he'd never be caught dead doing another project with him, that if Deku ever thought they were equals, he should let go of that idea immediately. How about this? Bakugou says challengingly. None of you fucking talk to me, and we'll be just fine. As soon as the limo pulls up, Bakugou throws himself out of the car and storms away from the rest of them. He hears Ida and Uraraka calling after him, but he doesn't respond. He doesn't need the entire UA peanut gallery following him wherever he goes. This is supposed to be some kind of charity benefit, airing until the clock strikes 12 at midnight. There are only one group of stars at the end of a long list, and Bakugou bristles at the idea that he's just one more name tacked on. He should be the main event, if anything. Backstage, there's a coffee station set up for guests. Bakugou elbows his way to the front of the line, orders himself a drink, and stands back with his arms crossed. The caffeine likely won't help his mood, but he needs to be doing something. You know, my guy, you might want to work on softening your image a bit. There's a beanpole of a guy standing next to him, trying to maneuver 6 different drinks into a cardboard container. He's got ink-black dark hair, and a face so plain that Bakugou doubts he'll recognize him if he ever sees him again. Who the hell asked you? Bakugou demands. The guy shrugs, smiles guilelessly. No one. But people talk. I think you're pretty talented, but maybe if you weren't in the news for beating up your co-stars, you'd get further, you know? Bakugou growls, lifts a foot and stamps on the guy's toe. Did I fucking ask? He winces, takes a step back, careful not to spill the drinks. You're exactly as advertised, huh? Bakugou hates the thought of being predictable. He knows he's got a reputation, knows exactly why he was cast as bad boy Nobuhiko on UA. His anger isn't all there is to him, and yet it's the only part that anyone ever sees. So what do you suggest, soy sauce? He sneers at the guy. The tall guy shrugs. I don't know. Maybe being seen hanging out with some people you actually like once in a while. Or date someone. The press loves a good celebrity couple. We get it. You don't like Midoriya Izuku. So, don't always be in the tabloids when it's about him. It's such a simple, obvious suggestion. Bakugou has been so caught up in this show and its associated drama. He hasn't just had a day to himself in years. Who even are his friends anymore? Who would he want to hang out with, just to relax? Who are you supposed to be anyway? Bakugou mutters. Oh, no one, the guy says, waving one free hand. Speaking of, I gotta hand these drinks out and get back to Ashido. So... He smiles, and then turns away. As he does, Bakugou catches sight of his name badge, Cellophane Agencies. His coffee is finally ready. Bakugou takes a long sip, and stalks off. The person crashes into him without warning, and Bakugou's coffee cup goes flying. Thankfully, it lands a few feet away from him on the floor. The last few sips spilled a safe distance from Bakugou's studio-approved wardrobe. Still, he doesn't appreciate being dropped on his ass in the middle of a hallway. His temper is already frayed, and this does nothing to help. Scrambling up to his knees, he looks around and finds a target for his ire. "Watch where the fuck you're going!" he spits. The guy is still on the floor, a dark smudge against the bright white tile. He's dressed all in black, his hair a lank, dark mess hiding his face. The only spot of color on him comes from his bright red shoes, and those remind Bakugou enough of Deku that they don't help ease his temper in the slightest. The guy finally turns to look at him, and Bakugou blinks in surprise. Bakugou's not one to notice people's looks. Usually that equation runs in the other direction. But it's hard not to ignore his wide, earnest red eyes. He's got a strong chin, sharp teeth poking into his lower lip, a scar over his left eye. He looks like he's been crying. Bakugou doesn't know what to do with any of this. People have approached him crying before. Every time they go to a damn UA fan event, some kid or other breaks down when it's their turn to take a photo with him. But this is different. This person isn't excited to the point of hysteria. He's sad. Bakugou avoids sadness at all costs, even if that means wrapping it in so many layers of anger it becomes unrecognizable and unreachable. Well, he gets to his feet, grabs the guy by the shoulder and pulls him up. You bumped into me, didn't you? Not gonna try and claim it was my fault? It would be par for the course, really. People have been blaming him for everything, for as long as he can remember. He's used to it, but that doesn't mean he has to take it lying down. The guy's just gaping at him, noisily gulping down breaths as more tears fill his eyes. He barely seems to register Bakugou's presence, and for a split second, Bakugou wonders if something is seriously wrong with him, if he's having a seizure or a panic attack. It really would be his luck if this ends up on the news. Whatever. He pushes the guy away, grateful when he doesn't immediately slump back down into the floor. Bakugou stuffs his hands in his pockets and walks away. For some reason, the guy's face is burned into the back of his mind. We've been looking all over for you, Uraraka calls out, grabbing Bakugou's elbow to steer him down the hall. Why'd you run off like that? Because willingly hanging out with you losers is like poking out my own eyes. Bakugou growls at her, pulling away. Uraraka huffs out a sigh, her cheeks puffing out the comical roundness. Don't be such a jerk, she chides. And who are you talking to just now? A fan? Shit, was that guy a fan? He hadn't asked for an autograph or anything. Bakugou has always tried to treat his fans differently from other people. They at least have the good sense to recognize his talent and appreciate him for it. If that guy was just an overexcited fan, Bakugou might have just ruined his impression of him. God damn it, he grinds out. He turns away from Uraraka and heads back down the way he came, looking around for that nondescript black hair. He looks down 3 hallways, around 4 different corners. There's no sign of the guy. The only thing that catches his eye is the shine of the overhead lights, hitting something in a trash can. Bakugou glances inside and spots a cracked DVD case. Grimacing, he pulls out the case and the undamaged one beneath it. 2 home-burned CDs, labeled in red Sharpie. Today's date, and the name Kirishima Eijirou. It's a whim, and probably a stupid one. But Bakugou takes the CDs with him. Weeks later, he's back on the UA set for the table read of the second half of the 4th season. His character Nobuhiko's romance with Ayane is heating up, but he hasn't yet seen what Deku and Todoroki's characters will be up to this season. If the director and showrunner weren't such fucking cowards, he would take his advice. But Bakugou doubts that will ever happen. He's the first one to arrive at the read, to the big conference room where the staff has already set out everyone's favorite drink of choice. Bakugou takes his seat, a thick script of UA Season 4P printed across it in front of him. Knowing he'll have to wait a while, he pulls out his headphones and presses play on his phone, listening to one of the songs he's had on repeat since New Year. The more he thinks about it, the more he's sure these songs were written for him. The first is a song about everyone only seeing one side of you, about everyone only ever seeing you for one emotion as you hide away the rest. Bakugou feels the words curl around his heart, read him like an open book. He'd be angry about being so transparent, except that no one's ever understood him so well before. And when he feels understood, he's not as angry. It isn't just the lyrics that catch his attention. The singer's voice is incredible, going from high to low at all the right moments. There's a youthful enthusiasm to the voice, but when it goes soft and low, Bakugou wants to reach out and grab it, feel it against his skin. He knows he'd sound crazy if he spoke any of this out loud, but he's more attracted to this singer's voice, to Kirishima Eijirou's voice, than he's ever been to a person standing in front of him. His eyes fall closed. His lips part slightly in the ghost of a smile. Ka-chan? He opens his eyes and whirls on the intruder, unsurprised to find Deku standing there. He's wearing a stupid t-shirt that says collared shirt across it, and those trademark shitty red sneakers. Bakugou's lips curl. What? Nothing. You just looked really happy, Deku says, almost wistfully. And now you're here and I'm not, Bakugou snaps. What's your fucking point, Deku? Deku swallows a sigh and shakes his head. He pulls out his chair, 2 down from Bakugou's, and sits. Bakugou hits play on his phone again, and steadfastly ignores him. He doesn't realize what's happened until he sees the episode air. Of course, he'd thrown something of a fit when he realized that Daiki and Yuki were going to have a romantic plotline. His plotline, the one he'd advocated for almost since the show had begun, and Deku and Todoroki were going to get to act it out. What kind of sick joke is his life becoming? But that had just been one level of fury. Another emotion entirely had risen up when he'd seen Deku's acted confession, his quiet anticipation of a kiss. On screen, Deku closed his eyes and tilted his face up. His lips parted slightly in the ghost of a smile, just before he reached out to grab Todoroki's hand. When their lips met, his face was wistful and honest and in love. And Bakugou knew exactly where he'd gotten that expression from. So maybe he's thrown Deku a wall or 2. Maybe he refused to take the part in the day because he'd have to see Deku simpering all over him all night, and Bakugou himself hadn't been able to face him in over a decade. Maybe he does need to get control of himself. to get where he wants to be. But at least he doesn't leech off other people's emotions for his own acting. Deku's an imitation, a cheap copy. He doesn't feel things as deeply as Bakugou does, as painfully. So of course he'd have to copy Bakugou in order to act out anything approachably believable on the screen. One more year, Bakugou tells himself. One more year on UA, and then his options will open up. He'll get the roles he wants, be the kind of actor he's always meant to be. And no one, not Todoroki or Deku or Yagi-san, is gonna hold him back. He takes a deep breath, puts in his headphones, and listens to the songs that have become his solace, his secret from the world. It's just a matter of time.